Based on my experience with the Tartison 0.95 35mm lens for APS digital cameras, I decided to give this one a try, and this one is known as the KamLan, or the brand is KamLan. Never heard of it, and sometimes I'm a bit suspicious of Chinese brands that I've never heard of. You see this a lot with consumer product. They'll market the same product under 5 or 6 or 7 different names, all of them obviously made up, and none of them really pronounceable. So this one is pronounceable, and however, never heard of it. I thought it'd be worth a try. This one was a fairly cheap lens, less than $100. Oh, what is this lens? This is a 50mm 1.1. This is in the Sony E-mount. It's also made for APS-C digital sensors. So in this case, you get a 1.5x crop. This brings us to a 75mm lens, essentially a portrait lens, so a high-speed portrait lens. How's it work? Let's take this out. We'll take a few shots with it, but first let's take a look at the lens itself. Okay. So in the box you have your KamLan lens cleaning cloth. In fact, it says APS-C right here. Fairly large cloth in a plastic bag. I don't know if you're aware, but the Chinese manufacturers love their little plastic bags. Here is something. It's entirely in Chinese. I have no idea what it says. Silica gel pack, and here's some padding. This is packed pretty well. Oh, let's take a quick look. They show the lens design here. It looks like a planar lens design. This is slightly different with this blue single element here. Often it'll be 2 elements, so you know it could just take the place of having 2 elements here. I don't really understand what the blue elements here are. The website really doesn't give any indication, so we'll just take it for what it is. Okay, pull the lens out of the box now. Let's remove the lens cap and the rear lens cap. This has an integrated lens shade, so that's a bit different, or it has an included lens shade. Let's see how this works. Oh, this lens shade bayonets to the outside, so you still have your ability to attach a normal filter here. I don't know what it is. Oh, 52mm thread, so that's fairly standard. This back on. Oh, there it goes. Sort of snaps into place. Okay, so here's the lens. Oh, this is different. So this is what you would call stepless aperture ring. There are no click stops. So fully open, looks like this. And as you can see, as you turn, you can see the aperture close down. Now this is fairly interesting because it's not quite a circle, but it's pretty darn close to being a circular opening as you close down. The thought is that a circular opening gives you better bokeh. That's the Japanese word referring to the out of focus portions of your image. Here's your focusing ring. Unlike the Tartison, this is more of a traditional, I would say 1950s or 1960s focusing ring in which you have these serrated metal rings. Not rubberized, all metal. Most of this seems like it is metal, except of course for the lens shade here. If you don't like that showing up on top, KamLan, you could always, I suppose, remove it and reverse it. There. KamLan is down here. As I said, this is a 50mm lens, and so on an APS-C sensor, it's going to translate to 75mm lens. Once again, this is available in a number of lens mounts, and what were they on the box? It indicated So on the box it indicates the Sony E mount, EOS M mount, FX, I'm not sure what FX is. Oh, Fuji X mount, and micro four thirds. Of course, with micro four thirds, this effectively becomes a 100 millimeter lens because of the 2x crop factor, or 100 millimeter, 35 millimeter equivalent. So this lens focuses from infinity down to, what is that, 0.5 meters? 0.5 meters is half of a yard, or roughly 18 inches. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good close focusing distance. Obviously, you can mount this to either any APS camera or any Sony E-mount camera. So keep in mind that if you're going to mount this to a full frame camera, such as the A7 or A9 or what is it, the A7C, this will become, you will need to change your camera so it recognizes this as an APS-C lens. The orange dot here, align this with the white dot on the lens mount, twist, and it locks into place. On the A7, I sort of like the look of this. I think it has a very natural look. I think it looks fine. It's a rather compact lens, and if you were to remove the lens shade, although I think a lens shade always serves a useful purpose, then it feels like it's even more compact. In this position, KamLan is now on the bottom, so there's no branding up on top. In the knife world, that's known as billboarding, when you have a lot of branding on it. Here, here. But truthfully, I don't really care. I do feel it's a bit of a distraction down here. I probably will end up, well, I'll just leave it. I'll leave it like that. I'm not going to go to extraordinary lengths. I'm not going to get gaffer's tape and cover up the brand. I don't really care if people know that I'm using a Sony. And photographers who know the shape of cameras would be able to identify it anyway. Yeah, I think this is a good looking kit. What we'll do now is we'll take this out, do some field tests. I think I'll try it on this body as well as my NEX7. We'll also do some comparison shots with a couple of other 50mm lenses, and then we'll come back and look at the results. So I'll see you momentarily. For me, it's going to be maybe a week or two, but for you, just seconds. So for my field test, I mounted it to this NEX7. I could have used the Sony A7, but I don't recall what happened, but I really just used it with the NEX7, and for that it worked fairly well. I didn't have a problem with it. Does this feel balanced? Let's take a quick look at the two weights, and then we can talk about that. So the body with a battery and memory card weighs 12.1 ounces. The lens, without the front lens cap attached, which is how you're going to use it most of the time, is 9.8 ounces. And so in total, this package now weighs, so now this weighs 1.6 ounces, let's say, 1 pound 6 ounces, so, or just shy of 1.5 pounds. So 1.5 pounds, this makes for a pretty good camera. The weight of it is sufficient enough where it becomes very stable to shoot. I don't know if I've mentioned this in the past, but having a slightly heavier camera can actually lend to more stability than when you have something very lightweight. The weight can help dampen some of those vibrations or some of the motion that you can sometimes introduce into your photograph by having a very lightweight camera and lens. So keep that in mind as you search for cameras or whatever. Having the lightest weight camera sometimes can work against you. I shot this obviously I shot this part on manual focus because it is a manual focus lens. This focuses all the way down to 0.9 or 0.5 meters, so that's roughly probably between 19 and 20 inches. And, you know, that's pretty good considering that this is a 50mm lens, which becomes a 75mm full frame equivalent. Once again, apertures run from 1.1 at its widest setting down to f/16. This again is a stepless aperture ring. That is, it has no click stops. That means you can set it anywhere between f1.1 and f/16. You could set it slightly beyond f2, or you could set it slightly below f2. It really depends on what you want. At f1.1, obviously your depth of field is going to be quite narrow, so always keep that in mind, particularly if you're shooting a three-dimensional object. that it's not a face. I found this lens to be, fun to use. It's not a bad lens. Size-wise, it's just about right. It doesn't appear to be too large for this body. However, let's take a quick look and see what it looks like on the Sony A7. Now, the Sony A7 is a heavier camera, heavier than the NEX7. When mounted to this camera, it really looks quite handsome. And I think it's because, the body's slightly thicker and it just sort of looks just like it really was made for this camera, even though it's not. So remember, if you want to shoot this with a full frame camera, you can, but you're going to have to set it in APS mode. Some cameras will detect the attachment of a lens that doesn't have the correct image circle or smaller image circle, and it's going to make that adjustment automatically. With the Sonys, you have to make the adjustment manually through. It's going to be set up, maybe custom settings. Yes, here we are. APS capture. Often this is going to be on auto. And you'll see what happens when we have it on auto. I'm going to hold a white piece of paper in front of it, and you can see how it vignettes heavily in the corner. So this is why we have to set this on. We have to set this manually. So now we'll set this to on. And now you can see how it no longer vignettes in the corners. Whatever shadowing you see is really just a reflection of the light. Now let's take a look at some photos that I took. It's just a handful of photos, a small sampling. I actually took more, but these are the ones I just decided to show you. We're going to start off things with a couple photos of my cat. The cat's always a very willing test subject. And you can see how this lens really captures the fine detail in the cat, of the cat's fur and its whiskers. It handled the high contrast situation pretty easily, and perhaps that is more a reflection of the camera's sensor than the lens. In any case, it has decent shadow detail here. Despite there being 3 leaves, I don't believe this is poison ivy. In any case, this is, I wanted to show you what it looks like shot at 3 different apertures. So this would be wide open. This is going to be closed down to about 5.6. And then finally, we'll look at a shot that's shot at f/16. In this shot, I wanted to see how this would look just when using this as an all-purpose lens. Not using it as a portrait lens, just using it as a walkabout lens, I guess you could say. And to do that, we'll enlarge the bunny, we'll enlarge the rabbit. So you can see it retains fairly good detail here. So our next look is going to be taking a very, very close look at the rabbit's ear. How did it do? Did it hold up this detail in the ear pretty well? Well, let's check it out here. I believe I had stopped down the lens in order to take this photo, and you can see it really holds up pretty well. I don't know that it's the greatest lens, but I think for what it was and the distance at which I shot, which would probably be in the neighborhood of 12 to 15 feet, I think it did a decent job. Here also shot wide open. You can see how the focus falls off both in the top and bottom portions of the photo, and as you move away from the center. And it's fairly gentle, it's not harsh, and so I think this lens accomplishes what it sets out to do, which is a lower cost, large aperture lens that you can use for different purposes. This is a little flash figurine that was on the ground for about a week. Now it's sitting in my office. And I'm not really sure how you would describe the out of focus areas. It seems a little bit harsher. Seems like there's almost some double imaging going on. It's just interesting. It's just interesting to see that, particularly when you compare it with some of the other photographs. Finally, here are some ornamental grasses that I encountered. And I sort of like this photo simply because it's simple. And there's the occasional brown thread running through it, which adds just a little bit of dissonance to the otherwise peaceful nature of this photo. But I sort of like this photo also shot wide open. So that's my take on this lens. I think for the price, it's a very decent lens. I don't know that I would select this versus a general purpose lens, but I wouldn't be afraid of using it. Are there better lenses? Probably. Are there worse lenses? Definitely. So it's somewhere in the middle of the pack. Keep in mind that one of the unique things about it is the fact that it's an f1.1 lens that can be had for, I think, less than $100. So that in itself is very notable. And that brings us to the end of this video review of the KamLan f1.1 50mm lens. If you enjoyed this video, think about hitting that like and subscribe button. If you'd like to leave a comment, feel free to do so below. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, send me an email, contact@camera-talk.net. And I'll see you on the next video.